If all goes according to plan, today is going to be the day that we fire up the V8 Swapped 2nd Gen Syclone project for the very first time. Now, first fire-ups are always a huge milestone, but this one is particularly exciting for me because this project's been in the works for the better part of a year. We started off doing some chassis and suspension upgrades, and we actually started the engine swap, I don't know, well, probably 2 months ago now, but we are so close to hearing this thing actually run, which of course is awesome. So 5.3 cam, a few other basics we've talked about a million times, but last time you guys saw it, we were in the middle of the transmission cooler install. I did get the upper brackets built last time. There's one there. But since then, I've actually finished this up. I have the 2 lower brackets built. I have the hood support, the hood latch support all modified and clearanced and ready to bolt back together. So we'll start there. We got to build some trans cooler hoses to go from the cooler to the hard lines. We've got to get the PCM flashed. We've got to get the intake manifold back on. I wanted to get the wiring harness installed first, just because there's a branch that has to go down that way to go to the transmission and stuff like that. Since you also seen it last, I did finish up the heater core hoses. Those just look really factory, I think, which is awesome. I love clean, simple, factory appearing stuff. So yeah, it's kind of chaos right now. I'm working on a million little odds and ends, but it's gonna run today, guys. I just know it. So let's jump right in. If you work on projects as much as I do, you're definitely going to run into situations where you need to do wiring. In fact, on today's upload with the 2nd Gen Syclone, we do a ton of wiring to get it fired up for the first time. And I wanted to show you real quick, though, a product that makes wiring quick and simple, and it just makes your life a lot easier, and that's with the solder stick connector. I've got one of their 500-piece kits here, and it comes with connectors that go down as thin as 26 gauge and as thick as 10 gauge. And like I said, there's 500 in here, so this should last you a little while. And the way that these work is actually pretty simple, because all you do is strip the ends of the wires, put them together inside the solder stick connector, and apply a little bit of heat. And that's going to do 2 separate things. Number one, it's going to flow the solder around the ends of the wires, which will bond them together and give you that good solid connection. But also, because it's wrapped in heat shrink tube, the heat shrink is going to melt or shrink and bind to the outside of the wire, providing that good weather tight seal. So if you're doing wiring underneath your car on a trailer, it'll be protected from the elements. Or if you're just doing something residential, automotive, power sports, whatever it is, you definitely need to grab some of these because it is so quick, it's so simple, and it is just so cool to kind of watch them work. So they actually have a sale going on right now that I want to tell you about. It's for Black Friday. And there's a link down below this video that you need to click to get the discount, but it's 20% off. And you guys can pick up your own solder stick kit. They also have a few other wiring odds and ends. So you can kind of just round out your toolbox, keep a set under the seat in the car, keep a set in your toolbox, keep some on hand. Check them out, guys. Solder stick. I told myself when I started this project that I was not going to use a single self-tapping sheet metal screw on this whole build. That's why I'm using so many of these little threaded inserts. The other thing that we did to this, we just welded a little like 5/16 metal rod to the edges where we had to cut it out just to add a little more reinforcement. I did end up buying a fair amount of this PTFE hose for the fuel system, and I have extra, so I'll use the same stuff for the trans cooler because the PTFE hose is pretty much universal. I always do wear gloves because I've cut my fingers more times than I care to admit on these little stainless wires. Basically, you just got to expand that Teflon hose into the little ferrule, and then it actually slips in. And once it's expanded, it should slip in and out fairly easy. So basically I'm just building a little bracket here so I can use 2 cushion clamps and mount these trans-cooler lines to stop them from moving around and to kind of hold them where I want. So just kind of something like that. I don't even know if you can see it from where you're at, but simple hole here, threaded insert, 2 holes, 2 threaded inserts in the bottom of the Porsche Sport. And we're in business. All right, so our PCM mount finally arrived. This is just a factory part for a little bit later model S-10. They're actually really inexpensive on Amazon, and they probably would make a really good universal mount for doing like swaps and stuff because they're perfectly flat on the bottom. And I think they're like 20 bucks. One more quick and easy thing we'll throw on that just arrived, the power steering reservoir from Holley. So we're now at the point of the project where I am going to start the wiring, and typically that's the biggest pain in the butt of any EFI conversion engine swap. But if everything goes according to plan, it actually should be very simple on this one because we have a plug-and-play harness. Now, I bought this a little while ago. It's from Current Performance. They make plug-and-play harnesses for a variety of vehicles. But the great thing about this one is it uses the factory fuse block and it just plugs in. Everything should work like original. The instrument cluster, the AC, basically everything that's there should work. This is the harness here, and it's mostly a basic harness. I did ask them to add in this guy right here, the flex fuel connector, so that saves us a little bit of time. So we can run our flex fuel setup. I asked them to run the EV6 style injector connector so we don't have to run pigtails on there. But yeah, it basically just has this multi-plug here that plugs into the bottom of the fuse block over there. And yeah, pretty much it should be plug and play. So let's just throw this harness in and see if it works. So there's definitely a lot of wires here, but it's actually fairly simple to organize because there's really just 4 main branches. First one here goes down the passenger side valley of the engine for coils, injectors, and it has this long branch here for the crank sensor and for the start signal that goes underneath. Got a second branch that goes down the driver's side valley of the engine. Third branch goes over to the fender over here in the fuse block. And then finally the fourth branch passes down on the top of the transmission. And that one has, the transmission, the O2 sensors and all that good stuff. So there's a lot of organizing and stuff that I'm gonna have to do, so I'll just cut and then show you guys it all installed. So the wiring harness is just about done, and we're getting the computer flash, and I have a tool here that I've been meaning to show you guys for a while. These guys actually sent me a whole setup, and it's really awesome because this allows us to do diagnostics and flash different control modules outside of a vehicle, which is really handy to have in swap situations. It's made by a company called Bench Force, and basically it's a bench flashing setup. So it comes with this little power supply. It's got a switch on the side for like your ignition power. Then it has all these different adapters. So right now we have the P01, P59 adapter on here because we're doing a Gen 3, but they also sent me basically a whole setup. So we got stuff to do E67s, different TCMs. We got a T43, we got a T42, E78 ECMs. There's another E38 one. So basically, if you've got a TCM or an ECM that you need to flash outside of a vehicle or do diagnostics, you really need to check this stuff out. Like I said, they sent it to me quite a while ago, and I've been meaning to show you because I think this stuff is just really neat. So I've got it hooked up to my computer right now, and we're just doing the read on this Junkyard 0411. I'm going to be flashing on a Flex Fuel OS onto this so we can have full Flex Fuel functionality. Had to make a few other changes for the Gen 4 map sensor and just a few other odds and ends, but I've got the tune prepared, so I guess first thing I got to read the tune off of here. So let's click that button and let us do its thing, which is cool because, like I said, we're upstairs. There's no computer or no vehicle here, and it's working. So we've got the wiring more or less wrapped up. There are a few odds and ends I got to finish up, like there's these 6 wires that are unterminated that we have to splice into this little branch of the harness, but that's pretty much the only splicing that you're gonna have to do. And overall, I'm really happy with how the current performance harness laid out. We've got one branch running here on top of these coil packs, one branch over here. And then so when we put the intake in, all we're really gonna have to do is just click on the 4 injectors on each side. There's a evap solenoid over here. There's the map sensor over here. That's pretty much it. Of course, we have the throttle body stuff that there's no throttle body on right now, and then the mass air meter. So really happy with how the harness laid out. The only 2 modifications that I had to do, number 1, the flex fuel sensor wasn't long enough, and that's because I put it further back on the frame than I initially thought I was going to. And then 2, I had to change the connector for the map sensor, and that's because when I ordered the harness, I wasn't sure what map sensor I was going to run. This is a Gen 4. We're using an LS3 style map sensor instead of like a LQ9 or an LM7, which this motor would have come with. But it's just a simple swap over of the connector. You do have to make some changes for the map sensor and the tune, and the pinout's a little bit different, but not a big deal, super basic engine swap stuff. So now it's time for the intake manifold. We are running a GM Trailblazer SS intake manifold. These are gonna make great power. We're running the 50 pound an hour flex fuel injectors, and this has the 4-bolt 90mm throttle body. But until now, we haven't actually had a throttle body. So of course we went to Holly and we grabbed the last few things that we'll need to round out this build. For a throttle body, we have the 90mm billet drive-by cable throttle body. And this thing is going to flow tons of air to help us support that initial 400 horsepower NA goal. And then of course, to round it out, we had to grab an idle air control motor and a throttle position sensor. Get all that from Holly. And then finally, plug wires. I just don't have any on the motor yet. And these are the Excel ceramic coated boots, and they're going to withstand that heat down there by the manifold. So we're pretty much ready to get this thing finished up, but I did want to remind you guys that it is now time for the Holly Days annual sale, where they have 10% off on like 6,200 individual product lines, whether that's MSD ignition, Bear brakes, Holly intakes, or even Sniper EFI. They've got cool discounts on a ton of stuff. So check them out. I'll have a link below this video, so just click that if you want to get 10% off. That's now through the end of December. So anyway, get your Holly stuff. Let's put this together. Now, one of the reasons why I like this Holly throttle body is because it has this adjustable throttle position sensor mount here. So you can get the voltage set exactly where it needs to be at idle, because these P01 and P59 ECMs, they are somewhat sensitive to that. So we get our throttle blade angle where it needs to be to give enough airflow, and the voltage where it needs to be so the computer actually realizes it's supposed to be idling. Gen 4 intake does take a special bolt, which is that part number. You can find them on eBay. That's where I got these. Vroom, vroom.
Fix the fork bit is so straight. The compare the other torque range. Yeah, he feel like a little tight. I thought exactly the same.
Alrighty guys, this is the moment I've been waiting for, and this is the part that always makes me the most nervous about any sort of project. It's the first fire up. We have, I don't want to say a lot at stake, but we've done a lot to this truck since it was running last, which I think was probably tail end of August, early September, when we drove it in the shop with the V6. So before we turn the key though, quick status update, because I've been doing a lot more working this week than I have been filming, but here's kind of where we're at. Engine wiring harness is like 95% done. I have all those crimp connections made in here, and then I even went ahead and eliminated that second disconnect, so now we just have a single plug to separate the engine harness from the chassis side of things. Just makes for a little cleaner install there. Everything on top of the engine is done wiring wise. I do have to make a couple more hold downs, like for this branch that goes down below. Mass airflow sensor, for example, is just dangling here. We need an intake tube to mount it in. But for now, all the mass airflow sensor functionality isn't doing anything. We're just using this as an inlet air temp sensor, so that can dangle right there. There's no belt on it because we have no power steering hoses built yet. There's no charge cable for the alternator on because it's now on the opposite side of the engine bay from where it was. But I am going to be redoing all of the battery cables on this before we're actually done, just because right now the V6 battery cables, they're a little bit on the smaller side compared to what I would like to see on here, and obviously they've seen better days. So all new battery cables will be on here before we're done, but it is wired up enough where we should be able to turn the key and hear this thing make some noise. All right, so start, just prime the key a couple times. I'll just look underneath and see if we have any fuel dripping onto the floor. Here's the pump. Well, that's weird. I rarely ever put an AN thing together without at least one leaking, but all right. So kind of the gauges should work. So I guess keep an eye out for oil pressure. See what happens. All right. You notice any oil pressure? Okay. Okay. You think we're running into anti-theft?
The light's not staying on.
It's not.
Almost what it sounds like.
Would there be any other module in the truck that has anti-theft on it? I was pretty sure I disabled it, but hit it again. So the oil pressure gauge works, the tach works. Cool. And that's just on a guess bass tune. Actually, you know what I did? I used the NA tune from the Kobo truck, from the 4A, because I figured that'd be closer than stock. Yeah, it runs. You see what it was idling at? It didn't seem.
It was at 9, then when you revved it, it went up over 1,000.
Got that
Sounds like better than music.
better than music, yeah.
Yeah, sounds much better than music.
I love that rumble. Reminds me of going to the NASCAR track.
Is it IAC trying to learn?
It might be.
What is this? Weird spacer?
Feed it air, don't you?
Was that?
Don't you want to feed the IAC air?
No, it has a port here. That's just a fresh air for the valve. So there's a port drilled right here that just goes through to this, so you don't have to run like a separate filtered. Still nothing leaking on the ground either. Got ourselves a runner.
Oh yeah.
Oh, the factory S-10 cable?
Yeah, and I got to redo it because it's not long enough, so it hangs the throttle in like that much when you connect it out. So I either have to modify this, or maybe if I get a Silverado cable, I don't know if they're, because I don't love how like long it is. You know, maybe like a Silverado one might be slightly shorter, and I could route that better.
I think it might be longer.
I think so. Even for an LS one. How do they? I'm trying to remember. They just do this, don't they? Where they come out over and then.
Mm-hmm. I think it's further down in the firewall.
All right, that is a major milestone that we have just checked off the list. The second gen Syclone LS Swapped project officially runs. Now, Of course, we're not ready for the first test drive yet. We do have a lot more work to do before then, but it's so rewarding, I think, to, you know, hear the thing run and know that all the work that we've put in up to this point has been correct. So grand total, I've let it run for probably 4 or 5 minutes. Over the course of the last hour or two, I'll run it and I'll shut it off so it cools down. Last time I did a data log just to make sure all the wiring changes that we did are still working. Like I made sure the ethanol content sensor is reporting correctly to the computer, which it is. The map sensor is reporting good. So everything, for the most part, wiring-wise, is done. There's just a few last things to tidy up and, you know, route away from sharp edges or hot surfaces, but wiring's pretty much done. In order to do the test drive, though, there's a couple of things that we need to finish up. Cooling system, obviously, that's probably one of the bigger ones. Radiator's being built, and it'll be here in a couple of weeks. Power steering hoses we have to build. We have to build an air intake tube. We'll show you all that at a later date whenever we have the cooling system in. The big one that I'm excited about is the exhaust system, because I'm going to try something. I'm using 3 mufflers, and I think this is going to be a really cool sounding setup when it's all done. So we'll show you that. We got to put the transfer case back in, because right now there is no transfer case, but I left that out just so we could get the fuel lines and the fuel system installed and built. And if we had any leaks or issues, then I could easily access it. But now that we have no leaks, we can start putting this thing back together. And that's really what I'm most excited about right now, is just, you know, getting the grill on, getting the bumper on, getting the inner fender liner back in, getting the wheel on it so it can sit on the ground again, and just, you know, making it look like a truck again. And then, of course, once we get all that done, we'll start the tuning process. I think it would be really cool, I don't know if it'll happen or not, but if, while it's naturally aspirated, if this could do a 0 to 60 in a similar time to an actual Syclone or Typhoon, which I think is like 4 seconds. It may not happen, I don't know. But I think that would be a cool benchmark, because I think the Syclones were rated at 300 something horsepower and 400 something pounds of torque, which should be pretty comparable to this NA V8. I'm hoping for like 400 to 430-ish flywheel horsepower from the combo that we put together, which I think is doable. Anyway, I'm rambling right now because I'm excited, but thank you guys for watching. I'm just so pumped this thing runs. So come back soon, and we'll be driving this thing before you know it. And also just a really quick PS to the video. Don't forget about the holidays sale that's going on from now to the end of the year. 10% off on 6,200 items. So if you need something to finish up your LS swap or your LT swap or whatever it is, check them out.